What's up there, workforce? And actually, today, really, what is up, jerks? We are going to talk about the drama around Ultimate. It's been long enough. The clears are out there. They've cleared Ultimate. Congrats to all the teams that did it. It seems like this time was a particularly big achievement. Hopefully something you'll be proud of for years to come, regardless of where you may have fallen on the list. It's incredible if you've gotten the clear or if you've even gotten close to the clear. And we are going to talk about the bans that are going out to data miners, what it means for you if you're doing something, say that's everything from ACT, I've seen some concerns about, all the way up to will this affect RMT? Will they finally get RMT bannable? And so on. So we've got a lot to talk about, but I need to catch everybody up with what happened first, and then we'll talk about kind of my thoughts on it and how it slowly devolved into something a mess. So we got the patch on the 12th of November at 10 a.m. GMT. Thoughts per second of Gilgamesh on the North American servers cleared it on November 16th at 7:26 a.m. GMT. This is all to the best of my ability. Huge thanks to Frosty for tracking everything the way you did. So I'm doing my best to kind of pull from everywhere, but like Frosty, you've put out a ton of content with the actual teams that have cleared about this. I've watched all that. I got a chance to catch some of your live streams. And if you guys aren't following Frosty, please go over there. Link in the description below. Incredible creator. Does amazing, thankless. I mean, even for people to thank him, there's no way to thank him enough for the amount of work that goes in, especially around coverage for things like Ultimate. So big thanks to Frosty. Here's where the issue happened. Thoughts per second clears at November 16th, 7:26 a.m. Now, for anybody that's watched World First races in the past, either here or on places like WoW, Thoughts per second did not do it publicly, so that may have a factor on this. But Moof, I don't know how I'm supposed to say that, of Tonberry over on the Japanese servers cleared it November 19th at 8:19 p.m. So 3.5 days later. That's a huge gap. And those gaps are uncommon if you've ever followed Ultimate races. Like, it just, I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm not saying it can't happen. It obviously has. I'm not saying it can't be larger than that in the future. But there is something weird about that. And after Moves Clear, it seems to be fairly regular. I don't know when Thoughts Per Second did their re-clear, because they were going to stream their re-clear. I didn't see that. I know that many of the other kind of top teams were streaming their progress. So part of the reason that they may slam that close together is A, it could just be that they were all figuring it out around the same pace. B, a lot of the common knowledge probably started to leak out there. You start to have people in chat saying, hey, I watched this other group clear this and this is how they dealt with that. Or you have people who've seen other videos, and also just eventually people clear things. So after that, it really does just start getting closer and closer together until there's just a whole stream of them on the 20th. As of today, the 23rd, this is all very well documented. It's not a big deal to talk about how the clear is, how the mechanics work. But on that gap between the 16th and the 19th, there was a lot of speculation about how they did it. Now, Square Enix verified this. I'm not good with time, so it says like the 18th, but I think that's in my local time, so I don't know. But Square Enix verified this, took them a little bit, and they congratulated Thoughts Per Second. They sent out a tweet. That's the official confirmation that the clear was clean. So to the people that said they did it, they just photoshopped a screenshot, that all immediately got put to rest. They also shared a copy of their footage with Frosty, who then confirmed it, but then people were like, well, what if Frosty's in on it? So from there, people began assuming they were cheating. And not everybody, there was plenty of congratulations out there, but if everybody agreed with just, good for you, we wouldn't be talking about this. And so we're talking about the select few and the group of people that really felt that Thoughts Per Second couldn't have won it. I don't know if it's because North Americans are supposed to think slower or what the reasoning is, but there's no way a group of people could have cleared this the amount of time earlier than everybody else. So the next set of big conspiracy things that I kind of saw thrown out there said that it was that they spun up a special server so that they could test certain phases and stuff. And the idea that within a what is that, like 4 days? Within a slightly less than 4 day window, they were able to spin up a server, then use that to test the progression, then get a clean clear. Because the video was verified. The game footage would, like, the game was verified by Square and the video was verified by Frosty. And just because you didn't see it didn't mean it didn't happen. So like they had to get a clean clear in there. So for them to spin up a server, it got ridiculous really fast. And the last of the three, and I know these were all thrown out in different orders, was data mining. And the reason we're talking about this one last is this transitioned us to the next big thing that happened. So they said that they data mined. They either had like devs from Japan leaking to them, which I guess maybe the devs just wanted one North American team and only one North American team to get first, and then JP could have second, third, and fourth. That seems weird. And or that there were data miners looking up tooltips, things like that. Now, if you compare this to like the other world race community that I naturally look to, that's World of Warcraft, you have things like the PTR and all that. And so class changes and so on, all the things that can go into the factors of a world first race are all decently documented and very public. Data mining is a thing that happens in Final Fantasy. It does. It happens in every MMO. People go into the client, they extract whatever data they can, and they reveal that data, usually in a fairly public method. It's pretty common. The idea that this would help somebody get a clear that much sooner, that they were able to get to something that no one else was able to get to, is kind of unreasonable in my mind. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Because it still requires an incredible level of execution. Even knowing what an ability does a little bit sooner than anybody else can figure it out doesn't stop you from having to be an incredible player to clear these ultimate fights. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So Sindoff and Svi, I think is how it's pronounced, seem to catch the brunt of this over on Twitter. I can only see so much of it because I didn't really become aware of all this drama until after Twitter started to go out and like ban accounts, and a lot of these things got deleted and so on. And so I did find some archive pictures of tweets, and the tweets degraded pretty quickly. At some point they were targeting Xeno, which didn't make sense to me, like how that all got brought in. And a particular group was saying that they were going, there became all these death threats around Xeno and Svi and Whooper Fury, and any of you that got death threats, I am so sorry that had to get brought into your life. That is such a mess, and it's never okay. Ever. There's never a time that is like, well, thank goodness for those death. Like, it's ridiculous. And for any of you that grew up with siblings, like, I remember as a kid when my sister would do something small wrong and I would try to like get her in trouble, or the other way around. And sometimes in the act of trying to get them in trouble or trying to exact some twisted sense of justice that in your child mind makes sense, you would actually commit like a worse rule break, right? Crime isn't the right word, because you were really just like, oh, I did something that is not allowed by our house rules. And sometimes you'd get punished what felt like worse than them. That's really what I see here, and it is incredibly immature. The idea that you're going to go out there and you're going to threaten somebody's life over a video game, if you want to bring it to Square Enix's attention that you believe you found a way that somebody's cheating, by all means do that. The World First Race is something that Yoshi seems reticent to really encourage because they believe it leads to unhealthy gaming habits and it's an unhealthy way to enjoy the content. But as of now, they congratulate the teams on their work. And I think nobody wants a team that took first or second or whatever position they took, if there was cheating involved, to get that credit. For the people that live their life on FF logs and things like that, they worked hard to be in the position they're in, and they deserve to not have that tainted by people cheating. And that's true of every aspect of this game or any game. So if you have something, yes, 100% report it. But the death threats is where I really struggle. I just don't see any logic in it. Now, that is where, from everything I can find on Reddit and Twitter and Discord and on YouTube and on Twitch about this, Square Enix seems to have decided, okay, well, then we need to do something about this. And historically, Square Enix, for the most part, has enforced their policies only while you're in game. So if you do something wrong, you kind of have to be caught in game doing something wrong. And that's great, but that means that to these people sending these death threats and all that, or if is cheating going on, if that is taking place off platform, it wouldn't be enforced. And so they decided to toss out some bans and suspensions. Now, if the people who sent those death threats got banned or suspended, I doubt they're going to be like, oh no, like they're not going to share that with us. So we don't know. We don't know. But the ones who did get affected were the data miners. I think this was just kind of a final straw. And this whole mess about this, like, well then fine. Like, let's just start shutting down data mining. So this is a big shift. Data mining has been something that has been kind of contentious in the past between Square Enix and them. I met with some data miners while I was out at FanFest. Some of the people that help kind of share with the community all of the leaks of new costumes or class changes and all that. And I know you guys know that, like, Bryan and I personally feel that we prefer the surprise. We think that the one thing that Square Enix deserves as a thank you to their work from us is that look of surprise instead of knew that was coming. And so, like, that's our gift to them, is they surprise us, and we didn't give that surprise to somebody who leaked it to us. We gave it to them. So we don't really put a lot of stock in leaks. We don't go spend a lot of time looking them up. But there are other people who simply can't wait, and they love kind of being ahead of the curve, and that hype train kind of forms around them. And so I understand that's part of the community. And there's a big part of data mining that takes place in and around the websites that are unofficially the place that we all hang out around the 14 community. And these people provide a service to the community and to the people that want that. And now it seems that if they can track your character name through images, videos, the fact that you use the same name in multiple places, they're going to suspend you. And so Icarus Twine, one of the people that helps really kind of take part in that community, as well as Perch, and I'm sure many others got banned. And Hezkezel posted this. I'm going to go ahead and read this this post from, I believe we pulled this one from Reddit. And it says, so in case y'all weren't aware, Square Enix recently suspended Icarus Twine. They specifically mentioned data mining in the ban email and showcasing unreleased game content as the reason for it. Earlier in the week, another data miner on Twitter by the name of Perch also got suspended for data mining. In my own personal opinion, it's most likely a direct result of the death threats sent to World First Raiders, data miners, and even allegedly the dev team. So in other words, this is a textbook example of why we can't have nice things. As another example, Square Enix banned several players earlier this year because of some nude mod screenshots that were players put on Twitter. Those specific screenshots did not contain their character name, but elsewhere on their account there were apparently links to their in-game name, so Square Enix took action against them for breaking terms of service, even if the evidence was posted outside of the game itself. Word has gone out about Icarus' suspension, and now the main players involved in the data mining community are doing what they can to hide or remove videos and GIFs of data mined content, because specifically what Square Enix was after, that was what Square Enix was after in this case. I'd encourage everybody else to do the same. If you have any kind of modded or data mined info up on your GV account, Twitter, YouTube, anywhere, that could be tracked to your character, hide or delete that stuff. Ine posted a few minutes ago an announcement in the subreddit Discord about removing the data mine channel, and we'll get to that in a second. If you want information, you'll have to look outside of Reddit for it, because Square Enix is apparently poking around everywhere they can in order to enforce their terms of service on people who share mild model updates to three-year older content. It's certainly their prerogative to do so, and no data miner I know of is blaming Square Enix for enforcing their terms of service. It's really just more a shame that certain vocal people have to take this game so seriously as to send death threats to World First Raiders, making Square Enix step in and put pressure on a very die-hard, hardcore group of players in order to try to stop it. Other Discord servers are free to do whatever they want, but right now It's pretty much do anything at your own risk. And then he goes on to say, like, this is just his views, not anybody else's. They went on to post, we have disabled access to our data mining channel for the foreseeable future. This is posted by Ine, running... Reddit is a huge source of information for this game. If you guys are not using the Reddit community, they are where we get a ton of our live translation info. They are incredibly helpful, and we owe them a huge debt of gratitude for filling in the gaps that Square Enix cannot, for those of us that speak English and want to talk about the game more than the devs have had a chance to. And so, huge thank you to them. It's a bummer to see part of that community get destroyed like this. Earlier this evening, Square Enix have temporarily suspended the Final Fantasy XIV service accounts associated with community members who provided you the data mining service. This has been a feature of this Discord server since its creation, but that time has come to an end. We want to be open and transparent with everyone that, given a choice, we would continue to allow access to the data mining channel, but we cannot, in good faith, allow people to put their service accounts on the line. Should Square Enix change their position on this matter, we would gladly allow community members to once again provide it to you. Okay, so from there, and then we'll get to my opinion, I do want to say that the natural tendency is to be fearful that this is going to get you banned. That seems to be how a lot of these things are stated, and that's the logical line to let that thought. Oh my gosh, I use ACT, or I've data mined once, or I've looked at a data mine thread and posted thank you, or whatever. Are they going to just go wide sweeping ban everybody, right? Are the cops suddenly going to pull over everybody that's ever speeded and put them in jail? Like that's the natural fear here. Just like on YouTube around like all the COPPA changes and all of that. The natural fear is, oh my gosh, this is going to affect me. And I don't think that's the case here. I think they're trying to make a very specific example of incredibly public and well-documented cases. If that affects you, I am very sorry for your ban. That's a bummer, especially if you lose your account over it. Seems a lot of them are suspensions, so I don't know if any of them are terminations. And on that note, I want to go ahead and put some things at ease before we get into my opinions and thoughts on this, and we start to get a little more controversial here, because I assume people are going to disagree with some of the things I say. There is a section of the forums where Square Enix appears to just post straight up how many accounts get terminated and suspended on basically like a weekly basis for things like real money trading or prohibited activities, basically breaking TOS. We know that this all spun out of control around the World First race. So we don't know when Square Enix decided to start making this decision, but it would have been sometime after at least the 12th, probably after the 16th, and probably more likely, let me go look at these death threat things here. Probably, yeah, more likely between kind of the 16th and the 20th would have been kind of that time window when this would have been bannable. So I pulled up the ones from the 7th, the 14th, and the 21st, right? 1 week apart. And on the 7th, there were 3,281 accounts terminated and none suspended for RMT and prohibited. Now, unfortunately, those are grouped together, so we don't know which ones are just RMT specifically versus any other bucket. But this is the people who broke TOS in some form or fashion. Now, we move to the 14th. This could theoretically be affected by this, but most likely is not. We jump all the way up to 4,398 terminated and 7 suspensions. But the next one is the one in question. This is the one where we would expect this to be this massive, wide-scale ban spree as they go out to Reddit and Twitter and YouTube and Twitch and Discord and wherever they can find you posting on Final Fantasy XIV content, and they get everybody who's put a mod in the game, who has put an add-on in the game, who has chosen to use those things, who has chosen to engage with sharing information about things that may have been leaked, or maybe they're pursuing data mining or whatever to get at that information. You'd expect this number to go up, but it doesn't. It plummets to 1,447 accounts terminated and 14 temporarily suspended. This is during a huge play surge, right? The 7th, 14th, and 21st. As we go into, when we talk about the rebuilding of ishgard and all that, you have a lot of active players. So the servers are doing great. They have a ton of people on them. There's plenty of people to ban, and yet there aren't that many banned. So I don't think there's anything to be fearful of. Now, if you're going out there and tweeting out, like, look at all these ways that I'm breaking terms of service, like, not that many people are going to feel super bad for you if you end up with a suspension or a ban, like, and they seem to hand out a lot of suspensions versus bans to people in this case. The account terminations, the fact that drastically outnumbers that, I assume that's largely to RMT because that's a relatively unforgiving expense. Whatever the word there is. That's a relatively unforgiving offense. There it is. And so I think that there's not that much to worry about. If you think you're doing something wrong, you might be doing something wrong. But if you're just like, oh, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, you're probably fine. So I don't know that there's anything to worry about there. So with all this, if somebody cheated, of course, I think that they should be stripped of that kind of world first thing. I think the fact that we see major players tied into this, we see personalities like Xeno tied into this, people that we associate with being somebody to hold up to, a pinnacle of what a player can obtain, at least in PvE content. People who are known for the best knowledge of the classes or the rotations or the mechanics of content. Whether or not you like their personalities, in theory, that group of people, and it's a pretty big group, just not compared to the total number of players, that Frosty's list was tracking, and all the people in all of those 8-man groups and surrounding those 8-man groups, you end up with like the best of the players, the people who are best at playing Final Fantasy XIV PvE battle content. This is them. And so to see the idea that some of them possibly deserve an asterisk next to their name because they've cheated in some way is unfortunate, and it damages the community for sure, especially if it's true. But I kind of said earlier, death threats are never okay. The fact that this community can be so negative sometimes, it really frustrates me. If I had to put in order the things that I think are most likely the reason that this game will go on and be an immense success, all the way to the things that I think will probably be the reason this game ultimately fails, and I had to break down each aspect of Final Fantasy XIV, the reason I think this game is successful and the reason I think this game is incredible and that if you're playing another MMO, you should try it, the number one reason is its community. It is incredibly strong. It's amazing. There's nothing like it. For the fact that there are other games that have been around the same size, that have similar types of content and all of that, in all the ways that they can be like it, there just is nothing like the Final Fantasy community. It's just special. The second thing I would put there would be the lore. The story in this game is something that community clings to very dearly. And even for all the years that lore hasn't been my number one interest in the game, I have to respect that this is a very lore-driven experience. And so the fact that I don't like lore does mean I have to really like all these other things to make up for the sheer amount of MSQ that it takes to stay caught up in this game. Because it's a lot. And the other side of this game, the things that I think are most likely to damage this game, going through every form of content that has not landed well, every server issue, every misstep by the dev team or whoever, the second to last thing I would say is lore. I think the fact that the story squish in 5.3 is incredibly interesting because one of the hardest things right now is that I have to ask somebody to come over from WoW to play 400 hours of content to get caught up or skip story. That's their option. It's just not really a good option right now. It's tough for a new player to get in, especially if the reason they get in is they want to play with friends who are already at in-game waiting. Now, New Game Plus should be a huge step to fix that, the 5.3 squish, but until those things are perfect, as of 5.0 launch, I had a lot of concerns about lore, and it's nice to see those starting to go away, but lore is one of the things that ultimately will make this game, when it becomes 1,000 hours, 2,000 hours, 5,000 hours before you can get to in-game, the in-game could not have enough players to sustain it because everybody's stuck in this huge grind. And since I believe the content is getting better, I believe Shadowbringers is the best it's ever been, that means inherently that they're playing lesser versions. So when I'm talking about how great it is, they're like, well, I'm not seeing that. I might be enjoying Heaven's Word, but I'm not hearing what you're talking about. And so as the game gets better and better, we hope, that means that they're not getting a chance to experience the best of what the game has to offer because they're locked behind lore. But the most detrimental thing to this game, the thing that is most likely to bring this community to its knees, that the devs can do nothing about, that Yoshi P has to just cross his fingers and hope he and his team are not just destroyed by it, is this community. The way that this community can slam people for coming from WoW, or for, that seems to be a big portion of it, or for some perceived offense, whether it's real or not. If these people did cheat, it does not excuse death threats. Threatening to go to FanFest and murder somebody is ridiculous. I mean, can you imagine the damage that would do to this community, much less that person and their family's lives? Over what? A video game? Like, are you being serious? Even if you're joking, do you think that's funny? Like, it's not even reasonable. Like, just for a second, picture that, like, you had to read this tweet aloud to, like, your mother and your grandmother and explain that you play some video game where it's okay to, like, say that you can't wait to murder somebody, and that you know what they look like and they don't know what you look like, and you're going to kill them, and you know where they live. And I talked about this when we went through it with Scott Zone, and now Scott Zone is not creating like he was. And I wish him the best. That's a huge loss to this community. And even though it's only a select number of bad actors, the community is still the problem. The fact that we have that person in here taints the whole group. So he left ultimately because of the community. Yes, it was one person, but ultimately it reflects poorly on all of us. So this toxicity that we talk about in WoW, like, yes, people are not as welcoming. Yes, when I play WoW Classic, Baron's chat is ridiculous. But you know what it's not? It's not sending me death threats. So for all, like, I would way rather lose some of the positive to get this negative out of here. It's absolutely ridiculous. And out of this entire thing, some of the theories about how they were cheating are ridiculous. Others are worth looking into, I guess. And I think I trust Square to do that. Yes, I think cheating would really damage the game. Even the thought of cheating damages the game. Even the fact that we're talking about it damages the game. But way worse is this. This mess is so bad for the game, and it's so frustrating. And so as much as I went through this whole timeline about, yes, I think it's interesting that there's such a long gap. And it does bring into question, like, should we be streaming? Like, would the gaps get longer if those people were quiet? But as you've heard Bryan talk about earned media recently, is it bad for the game that the hype around that is not being streamed? So, like, I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, I want people to take part in this race, and if they're not actually doing the race, like I'm not, sitting in streams and engaging in chat is a fun way to take part in the community. It's incredible. And if you've never done it around an Ultimate, I encourage you to catch the next one. I encourage you to go do that. It's a wonderful experience. But it also keeps the race from being as pure, from being this that's what we should be talking about here. But instead, this had to turn into this whole thing where now the community doesn't have data miners, which personally, I don't like data mining. I think that it takes away from the surprise and all of that. So it doesn't appeal to me. It's not a part of the community that I will miss. It's not something for me. I don't go engage with that. And as a matter of fact, there have been times that I think people have crossed the line. And one of the data miners that I met out at FanFest said that they've been emailed by Square Enix that said, hey, you're kind of over leaking. Would you mind taking this down? And he was like, yeah. And he took it down. So, like, I think it's a weird dialogue between those two aspects of the community. And I wish we didn't know as much about, I think that it causes harm around things like the Viera and all of that. I think that it can make a mess. And that's a valid conversation. And that's the conversation that we should be having right now. But instead, it's about bans and death threats. Because that's the words that rise to the top. It's the natural thing to think about. It's the thing I'm talking about. And it's what gets my blood boiling to the point where I can't focus on, going back and seeing the clear and talk and listening to these recordings on Thoughts Per Second. So if you want the positive side around this, Frosty's had Thoughts Per Second on. He's had these interesting podcasts where you have a bunch of guests in there. I think he even had all 10 people, so the 2 people supporting and the 8 raiders. And there's interesting stuff over on Frosty's channel covering a lot of this. I'm sure there's a ton of other interesting content out there. It's a great time to be part of Final Fantasy XIV. I just also find myself incredibly frustrated by this very small section of the community that can just make it all taste a little bit bitter. So I'm personally really excited about the fact that Ultimate's getting the level of interest that it did. I wish it got more. I'm excited about the Restoration getting as much interest as it did. Of course, I wish there was more. And I'm really sorry to Sindoff and Spy and Xeno and anybody else that got death threats. And to those of you that got banned, it's a bummer that you had to be the example. Hopefully other people, because of your example, can make a decision whether or not they want to continue at their own risk. If they do, after this point, that's on them. But now that we know the bans are going out for it, just be aware of it. It's not a massive thing, so don't be afraid. I think ACT is probably still fine. I think people that use a handful of things, I think there's like some shaders and stuff out there. It's probably fine. Just don't be overt about it. Don't sit there and go post on the forums like, look at this way that I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to. So I think it's probably fine. Even data mining on its own, just for your own interest and your own edification, doesn't seem to be what they're going after. It seems to be the dissemination and publication of data that they didn't want out there. And of course, under no circumstance should you be cheating or exploiting. So under no circumstance, if you find a way that the game allows you to dupe an item or kill something without killing something, I mean, I'm surprised there weren't more bans that went out around people using the Blue Mage workaround and all of that, where they were basically power leveling their own Blue Mage. That's the fact that when it was described to me, what you have to do is before the server can register, I want to stop you right there. So that's really it, guys. I know that I kind of rambled on about my opinion. Videos are gonna be a lot from me for a while, as Bryan's taking some personal time with the family, and I'm gonna go take some time with my family around these holidays. So we may be posting less, but don't think that we are not any less excited about the state of Final Fantasy XIV. I'm actually excited about what 2020 means for Ideally. I have questions about what it means for WoW Classic. I have questions about if Shadowlands can be good for more than 60 days. I think WoW can always deliver a good first 60 days. The question is, what can they do to keep me after that? And I'm really excited for a lot of the other things coming out right now, and it's an exciting time to be a gamer in general. 2019 had more drama than I would have liked, but ultimately there's been a lot of positive things to focus on. So sorry for the negative post. Just was pretty frustrated around a couple people's behavior. I looked into this and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then it's like, no, I know I'm supposed to be focused on this side over here, but this is just so egregious. It's just terrible. And it's just not okay. So hopefully that kind of puts some thoughts to rest on, basically, if you're not given death threats and you're not being overt about kind of cheating or hacking the game, you're probably fine, and I hope you have a great holiday season. If you don't see anything else from us anytime soon, take care, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.
Hey you! Especially if you're a new face, welcome to the workforce. If you want to hit that subscribe button to say you like us, we'd really appreciate it. But there's a little bell next to it if you really like a channel, and you can go ahead and hit that if you'd like to be notified. Be sure that if that thing lets you know, hey, do you always want to be notified, or you just sometimes want to be notified, that you tell it, oh man, I actually meant by notified. So why don't you give that a click, and we hope to see you around in our next video.